For the past week, crews have been drilling through walls, floors, and courtyards, searching for Escobar's hidden treasures beneath Pablo Escobar's lavish mansions. There were vaults sealed off from the world, built to protect more than just money. For decades, whispers of them, amidst rumors and fear, had been whispered about. So, I can bring you some news today. They've actually found something. One of them has finally been opened. Inside, investigators have uncovered weapons, ledgers, records, and evidence of a hidden empire. Join us as we enter Escobar's secret vault. And don't forget to ring the bell, my friend, for the upcoming episodes. Pablo Escobar's empire. From wealth. Pablo Escobar's criminal empire began not with wealth or influence, but with petty crimes on the streets of Medellin. As a teenager, he discovered that desperation and opportunity could be turned into profit. He stole gravestones from cemeteries, sanding away the names and reselling them to unsuspecting buyers. He quickly moved on to car theft, extortion, and gang violence. Crimes escalated with frightening efficiency. By the early 1970s, he was ordering kidnappings for ransom, disposing of the victims even after the ransom was paid. In 1971, when businessman Diego Echevarria was kidnapped and executed, Escobar's group walked away with $50,000 and a reputation for cruelty that spread rapidly throughout Colombia. This ruthless ambition met opportunity when Escobar discovered cocaine. By 1976, the roots of smuggling were taking hold, and Escobar understood the future power of this trade. That year, he was arrested transporting 39 kilograms hidden in a car tire. But the arrest only confirmed his philosophy. Money can erase problems, and violence can erase the people who stand in the way. He bribed his way out of prison, and the officer who arrested him was assassinated shortly afterward. From that point on, plata, or plumo, meaning silver or lead, meant take the bribe or face the bullet. Bribery bought him influence. Escobar poured money into the Colombian political arena, distributing it to both the conservative and liberal parties to secure loyal allies. In April 1978, he attended a meeting with other drug traffickers at a rural ranch. This gathering marked the true birth of the Medellin cartel. Within months, their joint operations were shipping nearly 19,000 kilograms of cocaine to the United States. The demand was insatiable, and Escobar had the vision to exploit it on an unprecedented scale. Expansion came quickly. Alongside his partner, Carlos Leder, Escobar transformed Normanski Island in the Bahamas into a smuggling stronghold, a dock for incoming shipments, and refrigerated warehouses to store the cocaine until it was ready to flood the American market. The profits from this operation alone surpassed anything Escobar had imagined. With the money flowing faster than he could count, Escobar began to reshape his world in Antioquia. He built Hacienda Nápoles, a 7,000-acre ranch that embodied both luxury and menace. The property included a colonial mansion, artificial lakes, a private zoo filled with giraffes, elephants, hippos, and even life-size dinosaur statues overlooking the grounds. For Escobar, it wasn't just a house, it was a stage for showcasing his dominance. As his empire grew, he was a philanthropist, funding housing projects, schools, and hospitals, parks and football fields. For many, he became known as the popular Robin Hood, the criminal who gives back to society even while ruling it with fear. His public appeal was strong enough to enter the world of politics. In 1982, he entered Congress as an alternate deputy for the Liberal Party, and a passport allowed him to travel freely. He publicly claimed that his wealth came from a bicycle rental business as a teenager. Secretly, his billions were exposed. Justice Minister Rodrigo Lara Bonilla skepticized his past. Liberal Party leader Luis Carlos Galán expelled him from the party. By January 1984, Escobar had withdrawn from politics, and 3 months later, Lara Bonilla was assassinated. The blow silenced a critic, but also reinforced Escobar's image as a man willing to eliminate anyone who opposed him. His battle against the Colombian judiciary soon turned against them. Judges were bribed, threatened, or executed. Escobar demanded one condition for surrender, that he not be extradited to the United States. When this was refused, he funded a network dedicated to fighting extradition with bombs and bullets. In November 1905, in 1980, gunmen stormed the Palace of Justice, killing more than half of the court's judges. Despite the lack of proof of Escobar's direct involvement, suspicion lingered on him. The Colombian Supreme Court declared the extradition treaty invalid, but the victory was short-lived. The next president reinstated it with Washington. Escobar retaliated by attacking the same policy. On August 18, 1989, Luis Carlos Galan, the very leader Escobar had ousted, was assassinated. Weeks later, Escobar bombed Avianca Flight 203 in an attempt to eliminate Galan's successor, Cesar Gaviria. Gaviria was not on board, but all 107 passengers lost their lives, including 2 Americans. The attack was a turning point. The deaths of the Americans led Washington into direct war with Escobar. By the late 1980s, his empire had reached unimaginable heights. The Medellin cartel supplied an estimated 80% of the world's oil. More than 15 million tuna entered the United States daily, delivered by fleets of planes, ships, and even submarines. But with this crown came his personal fortune was estimated at between $30 and $60 billion, equivalent to about $80 billion today. In 1987, Forbes magazine recognized him as one of the richest men alive, listing his net worth at $3 billion. He remained on the billionaires list for 7 consecutive years. That wealth manifested itself in real estate, luxuries, and displays of power. Hacienda Nápoles remained the jewel in his crown, an unusual blend of luxury real estate and a surreal amusement park in Medellin. Escobar built Monaco, an 8-story fortress for his family, complete with swimming pools, tennis courts, and an emergency room in Guatemala. La Manuela built a lakeside mansion named after his daughter, designed for lavish parties and family retreats in the Caribbean. He seized a private corner on Isla Grande, transforming it into a palace with fortified windows. His wealth extended far beyond real estate. Escobar was a car collector and owned a Porsche 900, 11 Carrera 3.0 RSR, previously driven by Formula One champion Emerson Fittipaldi, a Cadillac 5.8 Town sedan designed in the style of Al Capone, and one of his first cartel cars, the blue Warbird 3011. His fleet also included powerful Toyota Land Cruisers, nicknamed Coyotes, for use in cartel operations, along with rare Porsche 356s, a Harley-Davidson, once owned by Frank Sinatra, and even a jet ski that appeared in the James Bond film The Spy Who Loved Me. It was later destroyed in car bombings or seized by the authorities. Its charred shell was displayed at Hacienda Nápoles as a curious relic of his ostentatious wealth. Escobar's financial power was immense. He paid off Colombia's entire national debt of $10 billion in exchange for a guarantee that he would not be extradited to the United States. This offer demonstrated both the astonishing depth of his wealth and the desperation of a man who knew that money alone could no longer protect him from justice. Escobar's billions came in such a massive influx that it became a logistical nightmare. The money arrived too quickly to be spent, laundered, or stored in banks. Instead, cash was crammed into warehouses, hidden behind walls, buried in fields, or locked away in underground vaults. His brother, Roberto, the cartel's accountant, later admitted that nearly 10% of all the cash stored, more than $2 billion each year, was lost to rats, mold, and water damage. The solutions bordered on the absurd. The cartel spent about $2,500 a month on rubber bands alone, just to keep the stacks of dollars held together. Once, while in hiding, Escobar burned $2 million in banknotes just to keep his daughter warm on a cold night. Money had become so plentiful that it was treated like fuel, firewood, or a muzzle. Cartel safe houses multiplied into vaults behind concrete walls. Fortunes were piled from floor to ceiling. Farms across Antioquia concealed sealed barrels of banknotes, many of which remained buried and undiscovered decades later. Some of these caches shared space with weapons, records, and evidence of the cartel's reach. Rumors circulated of tunnels beneath the properties, torture chambers disguised as storage rooms, and escape routes protected by hidden doors. It didn't matter if each rumor was true. The legend of Escobar's hidden wealth grew bigger than the man himself. Escobar's paranoia fueled his need to remain hidden. He trusted no bank or accountant and only a handful of family members. Money was buried, not recorded in balance sheets. Records were kept in secret ledgers. Each safe was both a guarantee of survival and a symbol of fear. Proof that wealth means nothing if it cannot be protected from rivals, the state, or treason. Despite all his power, Escobar could not escape the collapse of his empire. When Pablo Escobar was shot, Colombia erupted in relief. But even as authorities celebrated his death, what happened to the billions of dollars Escobar had hidden? The discovery of secret vaults. Pablo Escobar's empire began to reveal its hidden layers long before his final downfall. In the early 1980s, whispers spread about secret cash stashes scattered across Colombia and beyond. Escobar deepened the mystery when he bought a pink mansion on North Bay Road in Miami Beach. The 4-bedroom waterfront property, directly connected to Biscayne Bay, became infamous among locals who suspected it was being used as a cartel hideout and storage site. By the mid-1980s, U.S. authorities had seized the mansion, convinced that it concealed vaults within its walls and foundations. The government intensified its search as Escobar's power began to wane in the early 1990s. Police and soldiers raided his properties and warehouses, digging up the yards. At his vast estate, they discovered underground vaults, but despite the scale of these raids, only fractions of the hidden wealth were revealed. After Escobar was shot, his widow and children fled to Argentina, claiming they were left with nothing. His son, now known as Sebastián Marroquín, later wrote about his father's empire, but insisted the family had never seen any of the billions that had been under Escobar's control. In 2016, Escobar's Miami mansion returned to the headlines when new owners, Christian de Bourrier and Jennifer Valle, demolished it. Workers discovered heavy concrete vaults embedded in the foundations. One vault disappeared before it could be examined, sparking rumors of theft. Another was later moved under armed guard to a bank in Florida. A sealed metal cylinder was found under the kitchen cabinet, but it was empty. The searches attracted international attention in 2017 when Discovery Channel launched a program to find Escobar's millions. Former CIA operatives Doug Lou Oban and Ben Smith combed Colombia using drones and ground-penetrating radar. Metal detectorists investigated the cartel's properties and farmland. They even uncovered a safe that ultimately contained nothing. The program revealed the evolution of Escobar's methods: lead-lined safes hidden within walls, and concrete-reinforced bunkers. Agents also explored the human side of the story. Disguised as filmmakers, they interviewed surviving cartel members and Escobar's relatives. His sister, Luz Maria, described her efforts to atone by leaving messages at the victims' graves. They also spoke with the brothers of Jairo Velázquez, nicknamed Popeye, who admitted to ordering more than 3,000 murders, and Esteban, known as El Scorpion, who claimed that staggering amounts of money were still hidden across Medellin. The searches were not without risk. Doug Lou compared the order to kicking a hornet's nest, suggesting that violence still surrounds Escobar's legacy even years later. The legend was reignited in 2020 when Escobar's nephew, Nicolás, claimed to have discovered $18 million inside one of his uncle's old homes in Medellin. He said a vision led him to the location, where he unearthed bundles of banknotes wrapped in plastic, along with a gold pin, a typewriter, and a satellite phone. Most of the money had decomposed to the point of being unusable. For use due to humidity, Nicholas admitted to finding other caches in the past, but refused to share details. Over the years, Colombian newspapers have published photos of actual discoveries: $4 million in barrels in 1989, $25 million with gold bars in 1990, $10 million in Haciendanapolis in 2009, and countless smaller finds. Officially, the government recovered about $75 million, but investigators believe that at least 10 times that amount may still be hidden, rotting in the ground or awaiting discovery. Some of the finds have sparked debates about ownership. In other cases, pristine bundles were pulled from rusty barrels that remained intact after decades. A farmer in Antioquia unearthed barrels of dollars so well preserved they looked as if they had been recently buried, sparking a debate about whether he should be rewarded or stripped of the discovery entirely. But after his death, discoveries buried in walls, fields, and foundations revealed shocking secrets that go beyond numbers. What exactly was revealed? The darkest secrets. While still at the height of his power, Pablo Escobar had already built an invisible underground empire. His secret vaults weren't just hiding places. They were engineered to protect money, weapons, secrets, and, in moments of crisis, even his private life. From the outside, Haciendanopolis appeared as a playground of luxury, complete with exotic animals, swimming pools, and sprawling grounds. Yet beneath this facade of opulence lay hidden rooms, fortified by steel doors and concrete walls, deep underground. In reality, the property was as much a fortress as it was a symbol of wealth. Raids on his estate in the early 1990s stunned investigators. Inside the vaults, they found crates of AK-47s, hand grenades, and thousands of rounds of ammunition. In some locations, rocket launchers were stored alongside stacks of US dollars. Each vault was essentially a war chest designed to safeguard Escobar's wealth while ensuring he was armed for a siege at any moment. But the money and weapons were only part of the story. Investigators uncovered ledgers and records far more dangerous than firearms. These records documented shipping schedules, the encrypted financial transactions, and meticulously handwritten lists of bribes paid to politicians, police, and judges painted a picture of the Medellin cartel's reach, stretching from Colombia to Miami and beyond into Europe. For prosecutors, these ledgers were invaluable, a rare, meticulously planned introduction to how Escobar's empire operated. And chillingly, safes weren't the only thing Escobar spent time designing. Former associates and local residents described soundproof, windowless rooms equipped with hookups and drainage systems, suggesting torture or interrogation chambers. Although investigators never officially documented such sites, the accounts fit Escobar's reputation for ruthless intimidation. In 1991, facing mounting pressure from the Colombian government and the United States, Escobar reached a surrender deal. He would serve up to 5 years in prison rather than enter a state-run facility. He built his own prison, La Catedral, atop a mountain overlooking Medellin to serve his sentence. Escobar chose only his most loyal guards. The complex was filled with luxuries. It included a football field, a bar, a jacuzzi, a waterfall, and even a giant dollhouse. From the balcony, Escobar could observe Medellin and look down at his family home while speaking to them on the phone. It quickly acquired nicknames like Hotel Escobar and Club Medellin. However, behind this facade, the design served a deeper purpose: survival. Escape routes were incorporated into its structure, with rumors of trapdoors and tunnels. Its location atop a mountain, often shrouded in evening fog and protected by cliffs, made military attacks virtually impossible. Escobar even stored cartel loot inside, and the government tolerated it. But in 1992, reports surfaced that he had ordered the torture and execution of 4 cartel members who demanded he be transferred to a regular prison. Escobar refused. In July, troops surrounded the cathedral, but by the time they entered, he had vanished. Escobar escaped through a wall made of weak concrete, breaching it and disappearing into the fog. His foresight in building escape routes revealed once again how crucial hidden passages and vault-like systems were to his survival. After his escape, the cathedral was abandoned, and its legend was cemented. Years later, in 2007, Benedictine monks converted the site into a monastery. Pilgrims still visit the site, walking on the same ground where Escobar lived as both prisoner and king. Even after his death, stories of tunnels persisted. An FBI informant claimed that Escobar built underground catacombs equipped with air circulation systems, allowing him to hide underground for days. Colombian raids on safe houses in Medellin uncovered partial tunnels and newly dug passageways, reinforcing these claims. These discoveries suggested that his obsession with concealment went beyond hoarding money. He designed escape systems intended to keep him always one step ahead. Yet, this very mindset led him directly into his enemy's trap. The beginning of the end. The American intervention in the hunt for Pablo Escobar began in 1989 when President George H.W. Bush authorized a covert mission known as Operation Heavy Shadow. The operation's objective was to help Colombia dismantle the Medellin cartel. In August, the United States deployed Sintra Spike, an elite Army signals intelligence unit specializing in tracking fugitives by intercepting radio and telephone communications. Sintra Spike provided the intelligence that led to the death of Escobar's powerful ally, José Rodríguez Gacha. However, despite years of surveillance, Escobar consistently evaded capture, protected by loyalists within the Colombian police and military. By mid-1991, Escobar had secured a controversial deal with the Colombian government that allowed him to retreat to La Catedral. But when this arrangement collapsed on July 22, 1992, Escobar was immediately captured in Maryland. U.S. Ambassador Morris de Busby awoke to two phone calls. The first brought the long-awaited news. President Cesar Gaviria had finally ordered his capture. With Escobar's transfer from La Catedral, something Busby had been urging for over a year, Escobar was already out and had disappeared into Medellin with 9 of his men. At the presidential palace in Bogotá, Gaviria was furious when reports confirmed the disaster. No attack had been carried out as ordered. Instead, the Deputy Attorney General and the prison warden had entered La Catedral without permission and been taken hostage. The nation's credibility had collapsed overnight, along with years of American pressure and hundreds of lives lost. For months, Gaviria had resisted deeper American intervention, but the humiliation changed his mind. He turned to Busby and demanded full American support, vowing that Escobar would never see a courtroom or a prison cell again. For Busby, the former Marine and counterterrorism expert, this was the opportunity he had been waiting for. Busby knew that time was of the essence. If Escobar was given space, he would rebuild his empire in Medellin. He had to be hunted down immediately while he was still exposed. Busby summoned Major Steve Jacoby, the man who had been quietly working in Bogotá since 1989 with the Sintra Spike unit. Jacoby and his team listened to Escobar's calls for years, a mix of Spanish and English, as he ordered kidnappings, reorganized operations, and spoke affectionately to his wife. Jacoby believed he could pinpoint Escobar's location within days. The real challenge was whether the Colombians could strike fast enough. Their raids were slow, corrupt, and often leaked information directly to Escobar. Busby concluded that only one unit could bridge the gap: Delta Force, the most secretive U.S. counterterrorism team. Inside the embassy's steel safe, Busby, Jacoby, DEA Chief Gutu, and the Chief of Staff discussed the matter. CIA Station Chief Bill Wagner and his options were limited. Colombian law prohibited foreign forces, but Busby argued that Delta Force could operate undetected, disguised as trainers and advisors. Everyone agreed that Escobar would not be taken alive. Prisons and trials had already failed. This time, the hunt would end in death. Washington responded quickly. President Bush, heavily invested in the war on cocaine, personally endorsed the plan. After consulting with General Powell, he ordered Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney to give Busby everything he needed. On July 26th, a Delta Force team led by Colonel Jerry Bowen arrived in Bogotá under civilian cover. 2 days after Escobar's escape, he reappeared with a statement to the Colombian media, signed in the Colombian jungle on Thursday, July 24, 1992. The statement portrayed him as a traitor forced to flee. He claimed that the government's betrayal left him no choice but to escape, and even proposed a new deal: return to prison if the United Nations guaranteed his safety. Meanwhile, Escobar's phone calls with his lawyers were intercepted by Sintra Spike. Escobar accused the United States of interfering in Colombian affairs and instructed his lawyers to pressure President Cesar Gaviria regarding the alleged American involvement. This was a calculated attempt to stir up resentment against both the government and Washington, but Gaviria remained steadfast. La Catedral was gone forever, and Escobar was once again a fugitive. Sintra Spike tracked his location to an affluent suburb of Medellin just miles from La Catedral. For the first time, the Americans had the tools and the political authority to act. By the end of July 1992, in 1990, Colonel Hugo Martinez was chosen to lead the hunt after enduring years of failure and personal danger. Martinez survived assassination attempts, bombs under his family home, and even a $6 million bribe offered by a friend on Escobar's behalf. Returning from Madrid, Martinez rebuilt the Bloc de Bosqueda into a force of 600 men, training soldiers and police to become a disciplined strike unit with a single mission: to destroy Escobar. Unlike his arrogant Slavoj Spencer, Martinez demanded results. His methods were harsh, even brutal, but they worked. The Americans provided intelligence and technology. Martinez imposed discipline and fear, and for the first time, Escobar faced an enemy who could not be bribed, intimidated, or negotiated with. As expected, Escobar's reaction soon turned violent, and he began attacking civilians. Despite billions spent in advanced tracking devices, Escobar remained elusive. Sintraspite pinpointed his calls with precision. Delta Force raided the Bloc de Bosqueda hideouts with increasing speed. Yet Escobar adapted, evading and responding with bombs and executions. When the search for Prince Tyson Munoz, one of Escobar's most feared killers, was met with immediate retaliation from Escobar. 3 police officers lost their lives that same day. Funerals became routine, with widows fainting and officers being buried weekly. The turning point was the library massacre. Outrage forced the government to declare Escobar public enemy number 1 and place a reward of 5 billion pesos, about $6.5 million, for his capture. This was the largest reward ever offered in Colombia. A new force quickly emerged, the Los Pis, short for the people persecuted by Pablo Escobar. They bombed Escobar's properties, threatened his family, and left his associates dead with signs pinned to their bodies. Unlike the state, Los Pis offered no trials, no plea bargains, and no mercy. Their campaign made it clear that anyone associated with Escobar would pay with their blood. For Martinez, who had hunted Escobar for nearly 4 years, and for the Americans who had hunted him for 6 months, it became a reality, an undeclared ally. Their campaign of threats destroyed Escobar's network. Publicly, the Americans condemned the violence. Privately, they recognized its effectiveness. For years, Escobar had hidden behind lawyers, surrender deals, and political influence. Now, his greatest weapon, terrorism, was being used against him. The ultimate irony? By early 1993, the hunt for Pablo Escobar had taken a brutal turn. At the DEA headquarters in Medellin, Colonel Hugo Martinez kept a drawer full of photographs of the dead. When he showed the pile to a Delta Force operative, he said bluntly, "As long as I'm the commander here, they won't live." They were often recorded as victims of gunfights. However, the photographs told a different story: bullet wounds to the head. The Delta Force operatives sarcastically dubbed the last Maya yard. Yet, Martinez earned respect. Prisoners who resisted interrogation rarely survived, but those who cooperated were imprisoned instead. His refusal to submit, coupled with American technology, made the DEA a weapon. Unyielding, the Americans and Colombians knew they were racing against their own government. Attorney General Gustavo de Gripe continued to push for surrender negotiations, a prospect that U.S. officials feared would repeat the La Catedral disaster. Some of his men had already surrendered on October 8th. His brother Roberto Escobar and the feared killer Juan Papais Velázquez surrendered and were sent to the Itajuí prison in Medellin. Escobar showed no inclination to surrender. Instead, his lawyers continued to negotiate, infuriating those who risked their lives to eliminate him. Frustration mounted until Colonel Gustavo Bermudez told Colombian television that he would rather see Escobar dead than captured. This statement provoked outrage and a direct death threat from Escobar's teenage son. Bermudez retracted his words, but he had spoken what many thought in silence. Meanwhile, Escobar's enemies multiplied. The execution of his old associates, Fernando Galeano and William Monada in 1992, had bred a deadly vendetta in their widows. Mary Galeano and Dolly Monada, with their resources and knowledge of their network, along with Diego Murillo, known as Don Perna, formed the core of Los Pepes. The group recruited professional killers with offers of 20 million pesos each. By October 1992, relatives of Monada and Galeano were cooperating with investigators, providing intelligence that directed raids and assassinations. Escobar realized the danger, especially from Dolly Monada, after the liquidation of her husband. He looted her house and kidnapped anyone who might know her whereabouts. He even offered a reward of $3 million for her capture. By that time, she was beyond his reach. In August 1992, U.S. agents transferred her to Washington, D.C., where she became an informant for the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, under the code name 92035. Her anger at Escobar fueled her cooperation. She provided extensive intelligence on his finances, assets, and inner circle, whom she described as worse than Escobar himself. She urged authorities to strip him of his assets and target his family and associates, believing this would destabilize him. Her vengeance deepened after the kidnapping and murder of her younger brother, contributing to the increasingly harsh tone of the campaign against Escobar. Other former successors also switched sides. Carlos Leder, Escobar's former boastful partner, was in a U.S. prison seeking leniency. In a detailed letter to the DEA, he described Escobar's movements between the safe houses near Medellin, his reliance on cell phone networks, his bodyguards, his escape routes, and even his physical weakness were described. He was obese, unfit, and unable to run for more than a few minutes. As Fidel Castaño, a paramilitary leader and former associate of Escobar, discovered after Escobar had killed his friends, he began providing information to Colombian and American forces. During one raid, DEA agent Javier Peña noticed Castaño join the search team in the field, attempting to rescue an officer, whose betrayal added another layer of pressure. By late 1993, Sintraspike, the U.S. Army's secret signals unit, had mastered the art of intercepting Escobar's phone calls. Despite knowing the risks, he couldn't resist contacting his family, who were scattered across countries and under constant harassment. On December 2nd, the day after his 44th birthday, Escobar called his son, Juan Pablo, for an unusually long time. This was the slip-up Sintraspike had been waiting for. Within hours, Colonel Martinez's men were gathering in the Los Olivos neighborhood of Medellin. Inside a modest house, in a line, Escobar and his loyal driver, Alvaro de Jesus Aguillo, nicknamed El Limón, waited, confident that no one would think to search near the house. A police officer spotted a long-haired, bearded man in an upstairs window. He looked older and heavier than in photos of Escobar, but the hunters knew. The attack was swift. El Limón sped first, sprinting through a window to the lower roof and running away. A volley of bullets brought him down. Escobar followed, armed with 2 pistols, including the psych shower he had once handed over at the Cathedral. He climbed across the rooftops, returning fire, but 3 bullets struck him, 1 in the leg, 1 in the back, and 1 through the ear. Minutes later, he lay lifeless beside his bodyguard. The question of who fired the fatal shot sparked immediate controversy. Search and Rescue Unit Officer Hugo Aguilar claimed credit. Domperna insisted his brother did it. A conspiracy theorist said American agents pulled the trigger. No definitive witness came forward. Neighbors had hidden inside their homes, and the first photos were taken by DEA agent Steve Murphy after he had secured the house. The official autopsy report identified a gunshot wound to the head as the cause of death, but it raised new questions when his body was exhumed in 2006 for further examination. Paternity tests yielded no new answers in 2020. Forensic tests reconstructed the wounds using ballistic gel, supporting a theory long put forward by journalist Mark Bowden. The head wound was likely from a 9mm pistol fired at close range, not a rifle. The wound showed no clear gunpowder residue, suggesting the muzzle may have been pressed directly against his head, or that the residue simply hadn't been recorded. Some investigators saw this as evidence of suicide, recalling Escobar's vow never to be captured alive. Others suspected a mercy shot fired by one of his hunters. The official coroner's report, oddly accompanied by a press release, went so far as to deny suicide, raising suspicions rather than resolving them. Despite the uncertainty, one fact remained: Escobar's reign had ended that day. His body, lowered from the roof, was photographed with grim relief by the search unit. For many Colombians, it was freedom after years of terror. For others, it simply meant one form of violence had been replaced by another, as they continued their campaign with the tacit approval of the state. For the world, the image of Escobar's body in Medellin was a powerful symbol of a man hunted, betrayed, and imprisoned in the city that once worshipped him. Thank you for your feedback on this episode. If you like it, I recommend watching this episode as it is very important.